Actually, 2 years ago, as my son graduated from high school, he was quite young, and I didn't think he was ready for college, and I was really wanting him to go do a gap year. It's something that some parents and then their kids will do after high school before starting college, and so I wanted my son Rashan to go do something in India. And at that time, I reached out to a few friends, and I thought maybe some Pingalwada, opportunity, something to go work with some NGO in Punjab. And at that time, maybe I just didn't do enough research. But the feedback that I got was, don't send your kid here. Safety issues, this, that, or the other, right? So in the end, I was disheartened that I couldn't find a good program for my son to be part of. And I actually ended up sending my son to Spain for a year. After that, this summer, Gurpreet Kanji, who's actually had visited PDL back in December, she shared that, hey, we're doing a POC, like a proof of concept, to do an internship with Punjab Digital Library. So I took that opportunity. Both my sons went, and I think they had a lot of reservations about going to India and Punjab in general. And after the 4 weeks, as the week was ending, my sons are telling me, Dad, can we do this next year? My older one, who actually is in college, he says, hey, next year, or actually in the fall semester, Dad, I think I can take all online classes, and can I just stay here for another 4 months? I mean, this is how these guys turned around. And so my kids were born and raised here. I came here when I was 10. And we have this longing for Punjab, right? We have this thing where it's in our imagination, it's in our loss, and we just don't have enough, I think, to basically go back and connect with. So we're always having our kids look for programs, look for inspiration. So for me, PDL turned out to be that incredible opportunity. And what I'm here to talk about is that as a parent, I think next year we're looking to maybe get 10 kids from North America to go participate. And I would love that if Yuba City community could find one person, one kid, support that individual, send that individual, sponsor that individual to go. And you guys have an incredible investment here that Dr. Khan's made with the Sutton County Museum, which some of you may will check it out today afternoon. So imagine sending one of your kids from your community here to go participate in PDL and create an exhibit like this that you can permanently display at the Sutton County Museum, right? I think it's a great opportunity for you guys to think along those lines. And again, I got my expectations far exceeded what my kids got out of it. If you're visiting Chandigarh, please check out PDL. They're in Sector 26. And I think you can see what they've done. So today, I think Gurpreet mentioned this, and I'll finish with this. They have digitized in the last 20 years 80 million artifacts. And they were very slow going the first 10 years because of funding. And then now they've got about 80 people on staff, and now they're digitizing about 5 million artifacts a year. And that's only going to accelerate. So we are, by the way, doing the live or the auction. There's numbers behind the paintings. And I think the bid's starting at $250, which is not very much. But please, all this funding will help PDL continue the great work that they've been doing. So thank you for coming, and thank you for the support.
So, fireworks question answer karne hai. So I have a request to everybody that please stay, don't leave. I think that discussion part is always very important. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Walk over here. Tell what's your name and ask the question. So that way it gets recorded.
First of all, I want to say it's a good seminar. I'm a listener, and all those good, all three speakers are excellent speakers. I have a couple of informational questions for the speakers. The first question goes to Professor Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis spoke very well. The question I have for him is, What is the reason? He explained so well in his speech, and I listened almost 98% of him. And the question is, what made him to turn and study Sikhism? In 30 seconds, Professor Lewis, please.
It's very easy to answer. There's two reasons why I started studying Sikh dance. One was I grew up in Toronto, and as many of you know, it is almost a mini Punjab, right? I grew up very close to the airport. If you know where the airport is, it's in Mississauga. And and when you go to that airport, it's like almost like being at Guru Nanak Das Airport in Amritsar. There's so many people there. So that's one reason. The second story is, I was lucky enough when I was a teenager that someone shared with me the story of Baba Singh, and that hooked me. And that's a very simple answer. There's no more than that.
Thank you. I think let's keep one question. If there's more, we will come back. So please introduce your name. Just ask question, no other comments, please. Thank you.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਮੈਂ ਵਕੀਲ ਕੁਲਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਰੋਜ਼ਵਿਲ ਤੋਂ ਸੌ ਕੁਸ਼ਨਰ ਵੀਰ ਅਮਰੀਕ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਸੀਗੇ ਨਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਰਾਜੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਯੂਰਪ 'ਚ ਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਅਲਾਈਅੰਸ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਲਾਈਅੰਸ ਰਿਸ਼ਤੇ ਕਰਾਏ ਸੀ maybe just to keep the power, don't make it alive. Because some you know, but I think you know that about that, right? Kashmir, I guess he would. You share that.
ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਲਾਈਅੰਸ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਅਲੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿੰਗਡਮ ਦਾ ਸਟਾਰਟ ਸੀ ਨਾ ਉਹ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਡ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਹੈਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾ ਅਬਾਊਟ 23 ਰਾਣੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਪਰ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ਡ ਕਿੰਗਡਮ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਨਾ ਪੁਰਾਣੇ ਜ਼ਮਾਨੇ 'ਚ ਆਮ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਇਦਾਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਰਾਜੇ ਨੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਹੱਥ ਮੰਗਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਵਿਆਹ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਇਰ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਇੱਛਾ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਲੋਕ ਆਪ ਵੀ ਧੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਫਰ ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਕੈਰੈਕਟਰ ਤੇ ਉਂਗਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਕਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਟਾਈਪ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਸੀ ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਅਲਾਇੰਸ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਬਿਮਾਰ ਹੋਣ ਲੱਗੇ ਜਾਂ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿੰਗਡਮ ਦਾ ਪਸਾਰ ਹੀ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਆਲਮੋਸਟ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਬਾਉਂਡਰੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਧਰ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਧੀ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਇੱਧਰ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪੈਂਡ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਪਿਸ਼ਾਵਰ ਕਾਬੁਲ ਤੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੱਧ ਚੁੱਕਿਆ ਸੀ ਸਿੰਧ ਤੱਕ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਓਸ਼ਨ ਸੀ ਇੱਧਰ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰ ਤੋਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਲਦਾਖ ਤੱਕ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਹਿਮਾਲਿਆ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹ ਲਓ ਵੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜਾ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਆਲਮੋਸਟ ਸੈਚੂਰੇਟਡ ਸੀ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਕੋ ਐਕਸਪੈਂਡ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਅਲਾਇੰਸਿਸ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ
Deep Singh, I have question for Dr. Khanna.
Good to see you guys. We're friends.
I have 2-3 questions. I'll make it quick. First, Professor Khanna cited one work which is a perspective from liberal scholar from 20th century. But what Nandlal wrote about Guru Sahib is different. First by Gurdas wrote about Akaru, Babi Makana. Then by Nandlal wrote Guru Nanak Ahmad Narayan Sarup, Hamara Naranjan Narankar. And similarly about the other Guru Sahib and Guru Gobind Singh. So the human aspect is there, it's kind of under erasure. There's no sense of duality between Vaheguru and Guru, the kind of duality we see between Allah and the Prophet of Islam. That I do not see. That's one question. Second is in your book Cherished Five, you wrote Guru Gobind Singh Ji had in 1685. Guru Gobind Singh Ji had political apprenticeship with Medni Prakash, Raja of Sirmola.
I'm not sure I wrote that one. That's not.
No. Actually, Professor Deep is a very well-known scholar and professor. So I would request him only ask questions for today's presentation. बाकी तुसी बात discuss कर लो.
The question was, you haven't cited a source. I have read it. You have written, but you haven't cited a source that would show how did Guru Gobind Singh Ji have political apprenticeship with Radha Prakash. And one quick question. In Zafarnama, in your book on Zafarnama, you have written Guru Gobind Singh, the Sher Chukar Azmahul in Deda Guzasht. That was popularized by scholars in the Singh Sabha movement. And I did not see any source. How can we come up with such a conclusion that only Singh Sabha scholars or preachers popularized that share? That share has been part of the tradition too. Thank you.
No problem. I can answer that. That does not say, I'm not sure. I can't remember ever saying that Guru Gobind Singh had a political apprenticeship under anyone. That does not, that runs counter to everything I think. If I said that, I was totally mistaken, because that is not what I believe. And you're right, my friend. The understandings of the Guru change. I mean, the image of the Gurus is not static, right? Even today, we see there are many people who understand the Gurus as avatars, right? I mean, even though we don't generally tend to think of the Gurus as avatars, and Guru Gobind Singh made it very clear. You know, the person who thinks of me as an avatar, you know where they're going to go. He says that in Vachitranatha, I think, chapter 6. So the understandings about, but one has to consider, you know, many of these early Sikhs, where is the place from which they're coming, right? These people who write about Guru Gobind Singh in the 18th century, right, especially by Allah, they deeply love the Guru. I mean, when you read some of you may know in the 18th century, one of the popular genres in which Sikh history was written was called Gurbilas. In the splendor of the Guru, the title alone tells you that when these people are writing about the Gurus, they come from a place of deep love, right? These courtiers of Guru Gobind Singh, they constantly tell us in the 18th century, one of the words they used to describe themselves, premi. They're premis, they're lovers of the Guru. So you can well imagine sometimes that intense and fierce commitment, emotional commitment, in the story of the Guru, in the Gurus themselves, right, will make them say such things, right? And one can understand sometimes, well, even though Guru Gobind Singh is saying this, I love him so much, I want him to be the divine. You guys see what I mean? Right? And I think that's part of the explanation for that one point, my friend.
So, Professor Bhavshar, for sake of fairness, do you have any follow-up question? No, we encourage this dialogue. You are a very accomplished scholar, and he is a very accomplished scholar. You guys know more than us. We encourage this dialogue. But we prefer the questions that are more toward today's presentation.
We can talk.
Maybe they need to have this conversation after the event. So I think before I go to my guest from Fresno, Dr. Vinder Brad, one of our panelists, has a question.
Thank you. I'm Kudapra. And first of all, Vakil Sahab, the question, and pardon me, and just to answer that, in terms of Maharaja's alliance, one alliance comes to mind. Maharaja's favorite grandson was Nauniyal Singh. Nauniyal Singh was married to Shyam Singh Atariwala's granddaughter. And Shyam Singh Atariwala, as people remember, in Anglo-Sikh War, he was one general who actually stood and fought. In a way, the British actually paid compliments. There was a Baba who stood, and he basically said, either we win and go home, or we won't go home. So the alliances were at that time, my understanding is that, Raj had become so powerful, they didn't need to get alliances with others, but he was finding alliances with his own Sardars and some of the ones who actually shed blood for him.
Actually, the question was, did he have alliance to expand his kingdom?
His children. The question was, so I have a question, and let me just ask a question from Louis. So he talked. I mean, first of all, there was so much information there in the talk. There's so many questions come to mind, but one question I have in mind is, as you know, by the way, Louis trained with Professor G.S. Grewal, one of the preeminent historians of our time. If you haven't heard of him, I mean, this is somebody whose books you should read. And J.S. Grewal talks about, he skirts the idea of, what happened on the Vaisakhi day when the Khalsa was founded. But he does give a speech that he says the speech the Guru gave was that you forget your Pichla Taram, Karam, Jaram, everything. I will reconstruct you, you'll be a new man, right? So that new man, I've struggled with what that new man looked like. So I will quote from the Khalsa Mehma, which was composed during the time of Guru Gobind Singh, whether he composed it or somebody else composed it. So Khalsa Mehma se likha hai, Khalsa mera dharam karam, Khalsa mera pel nij maram, Khalsa mera sadgur pura, Khalsa mera sajal sura. So Khalsa is righteous, karmic, kindness, reflection of Sadguru, virtuous and heroic. This is in the time of Guru Gobind Singh. And within maybe two decades, the Tanakh talks about the Khalsa as, and this is a translation, by the way. Khalsa is he who carries weapons. Khalsa is he who fights the enemy. Khalsa is he who slays the Turks, Muslims. Khalsa is who always fighting. Khalsa is who fights face to face. So now, I mean, there are two Khalsa, and we basically honor both the Khalsas. Where did, first of all, is that break comes? How would Guru Gobind Singh, obviously he was not alive during the second, and first of all, the first words that a poet wants Guru to say, the Khalsa Mahima, do you think that's Guru's words? And the second, what would go through, what did Guru have in mind? Louis told me, by the way, that Guru Gobind Singh has been in his mind for the last 40 years. So this is the man I can ask those questions.
That's a massive question.
Give us a short answer.
I'll try to give you a short answer. I honestly, from everything I've read about Guru Gobind Singh and thought, here we find a man of uncompromising principles. All the writings make that clear. Dare I even come close to thinking what Guruji thought? We don't know for sure, right? But the writings suggest that this was a man of uncompromising principles. And when the righteous fight was there in front of you, it was incumbent upon you, it was a responsibility upon you to stand up, right, for the oppressed, right? What is, there's a wonderful Shabd of Kabir that's coming to mind, and even of Guru Nanak, right? Parja, yeah, that's it, right? Right, and so I think mainly for Guru Gobind Singh, ultimately, right? Guru Gobind Singh wrote his own body, but he was profoundly inspired by Gurbani as we find it in Guru Granth Sahib. And there, the trajectory to perfection is very, very clear. And Guru Nanak enunciates it throughout Japji Sahib, a magnificent poem, as many of you probably better than you, right, where he outlines the various guns or rounds until we get to such gun, the round of truth. And I think a good Roman saying would have been uncompromising. The addition I have there is that, he was limited in the sense that he was a human being living on earth, right? And he realized those multiple levels of truth to which I was referring, using as my thematic the notion of the binary, the doublets. Right? And so when you situate that line in Zafarnama line 22, it's very clear that's a line. Because Akali himself, herself, itself, their self, right, had no need for violence at all. But in this real world in which we live, this is a phenomena that, at least insofar as statecraft is concerned, is inescapable. So that's how I think Wilkinson would have responded, uncompromisingly, right? Because he had the example of his father. Did his father compromise? Right? He tells us in Vijay Karnataka, his father was willing to give up his head, right, before giving up the secret, the sir and sir, right? So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Professor. So once again, we are not done yet. We have a lot of paintings, so you guys can buy those. Please don't stand, have a seat. So once again, there question, please don't chota rakho. Try to avoid any other comments on it. Just your question. Now we have the basic man. He came all the way from Fresno.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਾਜ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਭਾਈ ਸੱਤਾ ਬਲਵਾਨੋਂ ਦੀ ਬਾਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨਾਨਕ ਰਾਜ ਚਲਾਇਆ ਸੱਚ ਕੋਟ ਸਤਾਣੀ ਨੀਰ ਨੇ। ਸੱਚ ਟਰੂਥ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਫਾਊਂਡੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ। ਸੱਚ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਬਾਪ ਆ। That's the narrative of Gurbani. So how come we are trying to justify that Raje can be Yash, Raje typically do this, Raje can have this many wives, Raje can have this kind of rule. How can we allow them to move away from Gurbani's truth? Gurbani's truth is the ultimate truth. And that was Ranjit Singh's Raj is so close to Guru period. That's just one question. Why are we giving that room to not using Gurbani as a touchstone when that is the main touchstone or darpan we have? Second, Dr. Lewis, he's touched on so many things from Chittar Natak, Dasam Granth. When typical Sikh, he's more connected with Guru Granth Sahib, which is complete in itself. Why aren't we drawing narratives and questions and examples from Guru Granth Sahib? These are two my questions or observations. Thank you.
Thank you.
ਸਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਵੀ ਰਾਜਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਅਯਾਸ਼ੀ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਜਸਟੀਫਾਈ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਐਨਾਲੋਜੀ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਨਾਲ ਦੇਣੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਨਾ, ਉਹ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਿਵਲ ਵਾਰ ਹੋਈ, ਸਲੇਵਰੀ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨੀ ਸੀ, ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਲਿੰਕਨ ਦੀ ਆਰਮੀ ਚ ਜਾਂ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਂਟੀ ਸਲੇਵਰੀ ਇਵਨ ਜਾਰਜ ਵਾਸ਼ਿੰਗਟਨ ਤੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਵੀ ਸਲੇਵਸ ਸੀ। ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਰਵਾਇਤ ਜੋ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕਦਮ ਖਤਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਕਿਸੇ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੁੰਦਿਆਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਟਾਈਮ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਤੀ ਦੀ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਪ੍ਰਥਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਰਾਜੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੱਗ 'ਚ ਜਲ ਕੇ ਮਰਨ ਦੀ, ਉਹ ਖਤਮ ਤਾਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਲਾਅ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਰਾਜਾ ਰਾਮ ਮੋਹਨ ਰਾਓ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ, ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਠੀਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬਾਨ ਦੇ ਵੇਲੇ। ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਆਪ ਇਸ ਹੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਕੀ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਉਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਸਤੀ ਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਚੱਲਦੀਆਂ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇਸ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਨਾਲ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਕੰਟਰੋਵਰਸੀ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਮਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ, ਕਈ ਤਾਂ ਲੋਕ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ 4 ਵਾਈਫਸ ਕਿਉਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ, ਜਦਕਿ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਆਪ ਗੁਰੂ ਸੀਗੇ। ਇੱਕ ਗੱਲ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਇੱਕਦਮ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਚੇਂਜ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਉੱਠਦਾ ਮਹਾਰਾਜ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਲਾਗੂ ਕੀਤੀ, ਫਾਰਸੀ ਕਿਉਂ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ? ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਚੱਲੀ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਬੜੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ, ਇੱਕਦਮ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਚੇਂਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖੋ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦਾ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੈ, ਇੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਮਨ ਐਜ਼ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਇਨਐਕਸੈਪਟੇਬਲ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਇਆ, ਜਦਕਿ ਕਦੋਂ ਦਾ ਹਿਊਮਨ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਐਂਡ ਵਿਮਨ ਰਾਈਟ ਫੈਮਿਨਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਹੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਜੋ ਸੋਚਦਾ, ਮੇਰਾ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਦੇ ਹੋ, ਮੈਂ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਦੇਖਦਾ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਇਲਜ਼ਾਮ ਲੱਗਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਜਸਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਨ ਚ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਟਰਾਈ ਕਰਦਾ। ਮੈਂ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਸੋਚਦਾ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਨਾ ਹੁੰਦੇ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਕਾਲ ਤਖਤ ਦੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਫਿਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੋਲਡਨ ਟੈਂਪਲ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਗੀਰਾਂ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ, ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਗੀਰਾਂ ਨਾ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦਾ ਜੋ ਸਰੂਪ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਅਸੈਟਸ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਬਣਦਾ। ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਭੁੱਲ ਕੇ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਛੋਟੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਨਾ, ਉਹਦਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਫਾਰਸੀ ਦੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਨਾ ਕਰਦੇ, ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਨੂੰ ਲਾਗੂ ਕਰਦੇ, ਤੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਤੇ ਰਾਜ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਸੋਚਦਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਰਹਿ ਕੇ ਸੋਚਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ। ਜਿਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਜਿਸ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਜੋ ਅੱਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਮੈਜਿਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਔਖਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਮੈਂ ਸੋਚਦਾ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਾਲਜ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਦਾ, ਮੇਰੇ ਇੱਕ ਫਰੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਹਿਸ ਫਾਦਰ ਹੈਡ 2 ਵਾਈਫਸ, ਸੋ ਕਈਆਂ ਦੇ 3-3 4-4 ਅੱਜ ਤੋਂ 50-60-70 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸੀਗੀਆਂ। ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਬੋਰਨ ਅੱਜ ਟੀਨੇਜਰ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਦਾ ਇਮੈਜਿਨ ਕਿ ਹਾਊ ਇਜ਼ ਦੈਟ ਪੋਸੀਬਲ ਕਿ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ। ਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਜਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇਮੈਜਿਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ, ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਟੇਕ ਇਟ ਬੈਕ ਟੂ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਦ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ। ਮੇਰਾ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਚੋਗਾ। ਸੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਨਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲ ਸ਼ਖਸੀਅਤ ਜਾਂ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਾਂਗਾ, ਸਾਡਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਇਆ। So far we talked all along about justice, equality, freedom. It's very easy things to talk, but it's very hard to take action. So you all know yesterday was the 40th anniversary of what happened in many parts of India to our community. And this group of young people walked 350 miles from Bakersfield to Sacramento capital, and they had a very powerful event. So I'd like to recognize and welcome and ask Nandeep Singh to say a few words.
I actually want to just kind of continue the flow of the events, but not any single group was able to do anything. It was honestly the love of the Sangat Somni members here, my colleagues like Kamaljeet, I see Harleen, and just the local Sangat members that made a tremendous impact. Long-time friends that are in the audience as well. I guess I have a question, maybe a little bit more towards you, Professor Fennick. I really appreciate Dr. Yuba's words yesterday, but even today, in terms of understanding something that's own sort of time period. I guess the question I oftentimes wrestle with is, in the even modern, I guess, sort of Sikh imagination, the Darbad at Lahore looms large. both in terms of a remembrance, but also an imagination of the future. Because you've written on it in a way that few others, I guess for me, in my own engagement in history, I really kind of, actually much more look to the Devada and Anandpur of Guru Gobind Singh, in terms of, well, in a much more truncated period, what Dr. Yuba was sharing in terms of what was the statecraft that Maharaja Ranjit Singh was drawing upon was very much sort of Mughal, sort of, in terms of language, in terms of structure, the Divan. I was wondering if you could share a little bit, maybe for an audience that may not have considered the sort of Devada at Anand Prasad, but in terms of what I see in terms of the Rahat-names the discourses that were being drawn, the really formation of a new sort of almost Punjabi imperial idiom that was incorporating Braj and other sort of traditions. For me, it actually opens the imagination, actually, in some ways, far more than Lahore is able to do within the sort of the structures. But I was wondering if you could just kind of share a little bit in comparison, but maybe even in connection. Thank you.
I can do that. So, that's a great question, by the way. Thank you. The blueprint, or the archetype, of both Darbars was that with which both Guru Gobind Singh and Maharaja Ranjit Singh were most familiar. Guru Gobind Singh's Darbar at Anandpur, from what I know, right? As a historian, I'm limited by the evidence, and I know that sometimes the evidence does not support traditional interpretations. But all that means is that the traditional interpretation is not supported by the evidence. Okay? From what I know, Guru Gobind Singh, the only sort of example of Raj at the pragmatic level with which he was familiar was the Mughal Darbar and the many Rajput Darbars which attempted to emulate the Mughal Darbar. Let's keep in mind, from one particular perspective, the Mughal Darbar was very successful, right? And there's nothing more successful than success, if I can fall back upon a tired old adage. And so Guru Gobind Singh, right, came to realize that, or again, I'm putting words in Guruji's mouth, I don't mean to say that. That's just a shorthand for saying what the evidence suggests, in my opinion, okay? I'm sorry, I try to be very careful with my words, unlike some of our politicians. But this is the example with which he was most familiar. And in his writings, Guru Gobind Singh makes clear, he talks a lot about other courts, doesn't he? He talks about the courts of Ram, the Hindu protagonist of the Ramayana. He talks about the court of the Pandavas, of Yudhishthira, right? He tells us all of these courts and all of these kings, all of these figures, they all began to think of themselves very highly. And so ultimately they all died, right? The impression is that Guru Gobind Singh wouldn't fall for that type of egoism, that type of old man, right? So in his court, it seems to me, Guru Gobind Singh, again, and I'm basing this on the literature that emerges from that court. Unfortunately, so much of the literature that was produced in Guru Gobind Singh's court has not been published. It's all hutlicked. This is where we sort of bow to Punjab Digital Library because they've made so many of these hutlicked manuscripts available. I don't think I could have written any of my books without the Punjab Digital Library, so shabash, thank you. I owe you guys a great debt. But so much of this suggests to me that Guru Gobind Singh is trying to emulate, not emulate the Mughal Darbar, perfect the Guru Darbar. And he wants to perfect it by aligning it more with the divine court, with the court of Akkad. I didn't get to your question, my friend, about why we don't make why I didn't make as much reference to the Guru Granth Sahib as I did to the Dasam Granth. Well, one of the reasons is because Guru Gobind Singh does not contribute to the Guru Granth Sahib, but he contributes to the Dasam Granth. And so that was a lot of the material I drew upon. And when we see that material, Guru Gobind Singh writes a lot about courts, right? He writes a lot about darbars. Right? He wants his darbar to be, as the subtitle of my 2008 book suggests, the court of man. I would have called it the court of humanity today. In the world of the court of God, I beg your pardon, in the world of men, or the world of humanity. This is what he was, I think, attempting to do, to translate that divine court into the world. Keeping in mind, of course, the binaries about which I was speaking earlier, that this world, right, is very different from the divine. We can do our best to live a life in accord with the hukam, right? But this, again, will always be a work in progress, as it were, right? Because the hukam of God is different from the hukam that is in time. Because time and timelessness are both fundamentally different. We can't talk of one. Right? Whatever we say about Akkad or about the divine court is not the divine court, because we are using language to communicate that. Right? And that is a dark glass through which we can peer through and only see a reflection, as it were. But one better than the Mughal Darbar. So, that question then, this is what I think, based on the evidence, Guru Gobind Singh was attempting to do. Right? And I think this understanding of the divine court, right, modeled on the imperfect Mughal court, which he was trying to perfect on earth as far as he was able to, right? That word again from Majid Barnat. As far as he was able to, was the best example. And through service in that court, right, the courtiers of the Guru, the premis of the Guru, they could achieve that perfection, that service to the Guru, which was always seva, which is always a service that was selfless, with no hope of reward, would lead to the perfection, right, that ultimately on earth results in the Gurmukh, the one who's facing the Guru. Okay. So I hope those answer both of those questions. Should we look more at the Anandapur Darbar? Yes. Why do we look at the Lahore Darbar? Because so much more has been written about the Lahore Darbar. There is so much outside observer. How many outsiders have written about Anandapur? This much compared to how many have written about the Lahore Darbar. You can pick up a newspaper in any archive, the London Times, from anywhere between 1800 to 1839, and you can read about everything Maharaja Ranjit Singh is doing. The British loved Maharaja Ranjit Singh. They loved him, right? They talked about him frequently in the newspapers. I've read these newspapers. They were very fond of Ranjit Singh, right? Ranjit Singh was, I'm sorry, I'm stepping on your toes here. You are right, he was very shrewd, right? He was very shrewd. And there is this image of Ranjit Singh that he was very happy with the British. He wasn't. He fought against the British, but not through arms, right? He fought them symbolically, because one of the great things about Ranjit Singh, and again, I apologize for stepping on your toes, but the great things about Ranjit Singh is he was very insightful. Right? He saw what the British were doing. He recognized the overwhelming power of the British, as it were. He tried to attack them in the basic ways with which the British were most familiar, that is, with the military. That his Maharajaship would be destroyed. You know, I tell my students back home, Ranjit Singh was the last independent sovereign in India, the last one, right? The last one. And he had many examples of what the British did with those Rajas who did not fall in line, right? They'd be gone. You either alive the British East India Company or you're gone. So he knew that the only way he could survive and that the Khalsa Darbar, the Khalsa Raj could survive is by compromising with the British. This didn't mean he didn't fight them. He fought them in the symbolic area. He fought them through the uniforms of his soldiers, symbolically. He fought them through the shawl industry. He fought them through the award of medals of honor. So, because this is the best way he could fight against the British. And sometimes he scored some really wonderful symbolic victories, right? But we should never fail to sort of acknowledge how smart he was, right? How smart he was.
So, Professor, with that, I think, thank you, Vipali. For sake of time, we're going to take 2 more questions.
Sat Sri Akal, I'm overwhelmed and equally humbled being among such scholars and such learned audience. 2 questions. First question, we were talking about Meri Piri, Meri political power. Then, you know, of course, that time her power was sword, which, you know, Shri Gobind Sahib and Guru Gobind Singh Sahib gave equal importance and took that into Sikhism. But that also in today's world for the Sikhs leading to militancy and militancy being turned into terrorism, how would we interpret and where do we go from it? That's one question. Second is Darshan Granth, we talked and, you know, things, but there is, it's a Pandora box, you know, which Sikh scholars like to keep it covered because of a couple of things. One of them is the eroticism and there, which doesn't align in any way with Guru Gobind Singh's personality. So is it coming, you know, asking you as a non-Sikh, we don't want to believe it, but as a non-Sikh or as a scholar, do you find that authentic or it could be some manipulation after his death to malign what he had accomplished as a punk?
You want to answer?
It's for you and, you know, and
Then I think the first question is very relevant to today's presentation. Second thing is very controversial. There are plenty of information on YouTube. That needs probably a half an hour just to answer that. But I'll leave it to the scholars. Sure. No, I appreciate that. But we are not discussing Darshan Granth here. We're just discussing Guru Gobind Singh, Meri Piri. But I'll leave it to the scholars to their discretion to answer it. For sake of time, we want to wrap it up. So please go ahead.
Well, you certainly don't make life easy for me, do you?
it's for everybody.
No, it's okay. I don't mind. I get that question quite a lot. And given the extent of time, we can talk afterwards. Okay. But in terms of Meri, our speaker said that Meri is secular power, so to speak. Meri means so much more than that. When I'm writing, I always translate Meri as gentlemanliness, right? Because Amir is a gentleman, right? It comes actually noble. Some of you may know it comes from Arabic, Amir, and the word Amir is very intimately associated with the Central Asian conqueror, right? Amir Timur, right? This is why when the Mughals incorporated Hindu Rajputs into their Darbad, they would often refer to them as Amirs, right? We have words like Mirzada, which, as you know, the progeny of Amirs. That's what it means generically, but what it means specifically is the progeny of Emir Timur. Now, Emir Timur died in 1405, as many of you know, but he was the archetype of the Mughals, right? When Babur writes his Babur-Name, he's constantly referring to this relationship with Emir Timur. So Miri means, my first answer would be Miri means much more than secular power. Right? We tend to understand it this way, but I think when the term first started to emerge, that's not solely how it was understood in the early 18th century. It was understood much more broadly. It's just like, you know, how we in Punjabi, we translate Rajniti as politics. It means so much more than politics. Rajniti is etiquette, it's behavior, it's comportment, it's the way you act. Right?
Association with the talwar, that is, I want to have that.
Oh, that's okay, sure. To be a gentleman, right, you have to know lots of things. Of course you have to know how to use the talwar. You have to know poetry, right? Beautiful poetry. You could not even show your face if you were not familiar with the poems of Hafez or Rumi or Saadi or Nizami, right? And constantly when you even read the letters of any of these mirs in the Mughal Darbar, constantly they are peppering their letters with couplets, with baits, you know, from various Persian poets, right? And they're covering their poems because this makes them look good. It underscores them as mirs. So it means much more than political power. But again, you know, I'm giving you a 17th and 18th century understanding of this term. But you're right, Miri Piri today is an understanding of the fusion of the secular and spiritual. You know, I have a hard time with that. For those of us familiar with Arvind Mander's work, right, we know that there's a lot of space between these. So has it transferred to militancy?
I think Dr. Broad wants to add.
Dr. Broad wants to say, sorry.
That's why it was for everybody.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So, you know, just to give a background, my own talk would have been Sikh militancy Tarbiyyat and just war. It's basically answer that. So, one definition I want to give you is militancy, that we understand a man with a khanda or a AK-47. The dictionary definition of militancy is this: the fact of being active, determined, aggressive, in support of a cause, often but not always willing to use force. Okay. So, to answer, how does, and I have struggled with that question exactly, how does Miri and Piri translate in the world today where we have to live under a democratic society, right? So I will quote one writer, Paul Varys, read his article. He talks about 20th century Sikh. He said Sikhs fought 4 Tarbiyyat in the 20th century. They won 3, they lost 1. 3-1. And the 3 he gives examples of, you know, from Gurdwara movement to the Punjabi Suba movement, to the emergency movement. To answer that, I want to quote one scholar last, and Luke, keep your mouth shut. So he says, we should note that within Sikh tradition there are 2 forms of martyrdom. Those in which violence is appropriated as a last resort, and those in which the sword is withheld and revered. And the scholar who wrote that is this guy.
Just one line opinion about these couple of things. The first of all, I think we should not relate the sword with the militancy and the terrorism. In the world, there have been so many, in the different regions, terrorism, but they don't have Miri or Talwar or the hatiyaar with them. So the militancy, the reasons are different, the definitions are different, how we see it. And then you will see a lot of people who have the sword or the Amr Shakya, and they are the most peaceful people. And it's very, very different. I think we should avoid to mingle these things. And I think regarding the Anand Prasad Darbar and the Lahore Darbar, there's one thing about Guru Gobind Singh Ji. As a Sikh, most of us, you don't want to see him as a worldly king. You know, he was a divine power, he's a guru for us. So we don't want to, you know, bring him down to an ordinary Darbar for any king. I think that's the reason we don't want to discuss this at all.
No, I mean, this is a question often asked. You have to understand the concept of saint soldier. If a saint becomes a soldier, they are very unlikely to cause harm to innocent people. And if you just have a soldier without any moral background, they are more likely. So Guru wanted Sikhs to be saints first, and then soldier as the last option.
My question was in a context, though
So I think,
the word
I think the answer, let's not get into argument. So you had a valid question, 3 people answered your question. Anybody wants to say anything about the second part, so we move on.
The second part.
There are certain parts in the Sangrams which are, from his perspective, some people have concerns.
I'll stick my neck out, and that's stupid because I teach students here, and I have some very smart students, and they ask me this question all the time about the Sangram. So Guru Gobind Singh was very clear. There's only one Guru. Guru is Guru Granth Sahib. That is the Guru. Everything else, whether he did it as a homework, whether somebody in his court composed something, whether he allowed something, because a lot of that is literature. And that to me is Sikh product of Sikh minds at the time, whether it was the Guru or his product, how they interpreted that. But that is not sacred. And the man who said that was my Guru, Dasmi Prasad. So I leave it at that.
So Guru Gobind Singh Ji told all the Sikhs, Guru Manyo Granth. So आज जेड़ा दिन भी असी Yuba city च मना रहे हैं, lot of people have confusion that we are celebrating Diwali. Some people think we are celebrating Guru Nanak's birthday. The day we celebrate in Yuba city every year for last 45 years, Guru Gaddi Divas. This is a day when Guru Gobind Singh, before leaving his body, he declared or ordered all the Sikhs, sab Sikhon ko hukum hai, Guru Mane Granth. So, other literature is very important, we respect that too, but Guru is only one, that's Guru Granth Sahib. I think this is what you explained, thank you. So, any other question? Otherwise, I have few announcements. We still have food and some tea in the back. Please, if you want to see the museum, we will offer a tour at 2 p.m. Museum is only half mile from here. And you came all the way, Fresno, Texas. Please, don't leave this hall without buying one of these paintings. Pandit Gurpreet, you want to say some closing remarks? While Gurpreet is coming, I want to thank some of the friends, Dr. Kumar, Dr. Narendra Singh, Parapal Singh, and Hitpal Singh for arranging the food, for doing the technical part. Sorry, we had issues with our slide projector, so that's why Dr. Broad decided to do this presentation another time. If anyone have any suggestions, concerns, please let us know. punjabimamkin@gmail.com. These books are available if you want to buy this book on Japji Sahib, the other book on Banda Bahadur, and we have a book we published last year for the history of Punjabi migrants to this area. It goes back to 130, 140 years history. Please, those books are available at $40. And these books are also available for sale. And before I ask Pandit Gurpreet to say the final word, all I will say, I don't have any words to thank you. I know you had other options. Today there's not happening at Gurdwara Sahib, but you decided to join the Langar of Knowledge. Thank you very much. And we ask for any forgiveness on our end. I know many people want to have a more discussion. You can talk to the scholars after the event. And our purpose is not to cut down from asking your intelligent questions, just for sake of time. So, ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਖਤਮ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕਦੀ ਹੱਥ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸੈਪਟ ਕਰਨਾ. Thanks to Punjabi Virsa for here. Thanks to Chaddi Kala and thanks to Paji Chumbar from Ambedkar Times. I have a final question actually before you come. This issue, I think Gurus wanted to create a casteless society, but we have not practically become a casteless society. Where is the fault line?
I'll let Dr. Broad answer the real question, but the one thing is I think we should not, religion and society, two different things. Our caste, whatever we are talking about is like more, religion says that, but we are part of society too, it doesn't allow that. So that's where the conflict.
No, you answered that the culture at Maharaja Ranjit Singh was different, but how long are we going to stay in this culture? I mean, the purpose of religion is to make your life better as a human being and make a society as a better. Maybe I will pass it. It's a bigger question. It's a loaded question.
This is the name is Dr. Jasveer Kang. If you don't say him Kang, I'll say Dr. Jasveer, and half of them they don't know.
So, but Kang is the name of village, not my caste, by the way. Kang could be any caste. Kang could be from different castes. So let's pass this. So, can we quickly? I think I want to get a controversy.
It's hard to follow that, right? But I do appreciate the engaging dialogue that has happened over the past hour and a half. And from Punjab Digital Library perspective, ਸਾਡੇ ਦੀ ਇਹੀ ਆਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਖਜ਼ਾਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ original sources ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਥੇ scholars ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਅੱਗੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ they're referencing original sources to become scholars and then to elevate the conversation, and hopefully we can then eliminate the caste system that Dr. Lee was talking about. Lastly, what I would say is that, koi hor sanstha nahi hegi that is digitizing to preserve our heritage. There are thousands, tens and thousands of gurdwaras. There's tens and thousands of schools. There's tens and thousands of all other NGOs that are across the world. There is only one digital library that's preserving our heritage. How wonderful would it be that if we could all unite and support Vada Charkya Siyade vich hissa paiye ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਡਿਸਟਰੋਏ ਹੋਈ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਕੋਲ ਕਿਸੇ ਅਲਮਾਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਹਾਲੇ ਰੱਦੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ I can even tell you ਫੁਲਕਾਰੀ ਦੀਆਂ 1870 ਦੀਆਂ ਫੁਲਕਾਰੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੁੰਨੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਬਾਗ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਬੋਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਕ ਕੇ ਏਦਾਂ ਸੁੱਟ ਕੇ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਕਰਨਾ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਾੜਨ ਲੱਗੀਆਂ. Can you imagine 1870s ਦੀਆਂ ਫੁਲਕਾਰੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੁੰਨੀਆਂ? So with that, I just want to say it's in our hands and it's in our control to be able to preserve our heritage and to take it and save it and salvage it for generations to come, so that somebody can do research on something that's related to Punjab. Somebody can do further research on Dasam Granth. Somebody can do further research on caste system. So that way, and we tell our own narrative, not somebody else, not a third person. Our children, our children's children can support and reference the original sources and access them for free to be able to tell our own narrative. So with that, please continue to support. If you want to learn more about it, please let me know. We're here till the end of the day. Get involved. Do your part and make sure that you're furthering the mission of whatever it is that you're passionate about. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
there is always a woman behind a man. But in a gender equal world, it could be a man behind a woman too. Taranji is married to a very prominent Sikh scholar from Sikri, Harinder Singh. You all know him. better half ने फिर इन्होंने कहा जी दस्ते होनी पर मैं दस्ता हैगा. So before the end, we're going to give each panelist 1 minute to give their take-home message, and let's see, we can start with Dr. Tuba.
I think rather than comments, a compliment to Punjabi American Heritage Society to have this Sikh Community Center. And this is the effort of your team, and look at the use over the years. It's becoming more and more prominent locations for these kind of seminars and further to be used for other things. So I think the big hand for Punjabi American Heritage Society.
Thank you, and this is just giving a care. It was very graceful of you to spend your time over here. Digital library, I'm also very indebted to the digital library because I use a lot of their manuscripts for my own research. I could not have written down anything for that. So these are the kind of efforts we need to do. Please give your comments. What else would you like to see us do in the future? The goal is, Dr. Tugadesi, maybe in the future, get scholars come here and do a roundtable conference where it's more interactive, more people can have their input, and we have a more focused topic on it. So thank you very much for being there.
Yes, ditto all that, and thank all of you, because by sharing your stories and your history with me, it has very much enriched the life of this non-Sikh. And I hope one day that those stories continue through your generosity, and that one day we will be in arenas like this, we will be in the Prakashastans where the Guru Granth Sahib is, and we will see, alongside Sikhs, many non-Sikhs also listening to Gurbani. So I thank all of you, and of course I thank all of you for inviting me. It was very, very pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, the purpose of anything we do is to make a world a better place. Religion, philosophies, seminar, whatever we talk, in the end, the purpose is to make this place a better for all of us, not just for one kind of people. So that's the purpose of this organization, is to make us better, our community better, and the world around us better. So thank you for joining this moment to make this world a better place for all of us. With that, I will say, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.